Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today on this very lovely Wednesday. I am thrilled to have with me Tony, whom you see on the screen. We are going to kick off our discussion this afternoon, powering the next era of wireless innovation. And I am so thrilled to have Tony Krueck, Senior VP of Mobile and Product from Cox Communications with us today. If you've been with us, he won the award last year and will be sharing some of his strategies with us. Tony, good afternoon and welcome to NAMIC.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. My name is Anne Marie Burton. I am the Chief of Strategy and Programs at NAMIC, and I am thrilled to have you spend the next 60 minutes with us where we'll be discussing a lot of innovation, tech, leadership insights that I know many of you will appreciate. We had the pleasure of connecting with Tony, and I am so excited about his leadership journey and the gems so many of us could learn from him today. As for those of you who've joined us before, this is a very interactive space. We welcome your questions. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A. That is the area that has the question mark, and we'll be able to get to your questions as we go through the conversation. I see the chat is already buzzing. I see Monique. I see Rosalind. Welcome, everybody. So thrilled to have you with us this afternoon. What we're going to do is kick off with a short video that introduces you to Tony. And then after the video, we're going to get started. So here we go.
It's very humbling to receive this award. However, I do believe that my entire team should be receiving it. And it's great to be part of a very diverse group of individuals that tackled a very complex problem that is launching a new mobile business into the market. The award is an example and a reflection of what can be accomplished when you bring a very diverse group of thinkers and individuals together to launch something as complex as Cox Mobile into the market. We're seeing fantastic year-over-year growth, driving as much as 250%.
I love working with Tony. Working with Tony is one, you're going to be focused on, we got to get it done. We got to be focused on the outcome. But I like working with Tony because you can be unapologetically you. He creates spaces where you bring who you are to the work. You certainly have opportunity to advocate for your line of responsibility, but he still keeps you focused on the one team mindset to drive what we need to do, especially for building our mobile business.
Tony Krueck, in 3 words, I can say Tony is genuine, Tony is energetic, and Tony is friendly. He's one person that you can go to at any time.
Tony's informed. Tony always shows up with information. He spends a lot of time reading, looking through data, looking through insights.
Resilient, calm, super collaborative.
I think as Tony's built teams, he's made employees feel safe. He's made them feel respected. And at the end of the day, I think when they feel like they're really valued, they're more engaged and they're more motivated. And I think what we see with that now is we have employees that want to stay with us as a company. They're here longer, they're more engaged, and we have a stronger bench of employees. They have talent because they've been here for a while. They're dedicated to the work that we're doing. They're dedicated to their leader. They love Tony, and it's really given them the opportunity to shine, and they're here. And that retention means a lot to us. We want to build a culture and a family here that is meant to deliver for our customers and for our owners.
Diversity for me is all about creating environments where individuals have the opportunity to share their ideas, their thoughts, and they do it in a manner that has pure psychological safety, meaning they don't have to be concerned about how people might think about what they're saying. There is all inclusivity associated with people and what they're saying.
fostering diversity and inclusion in the workplace. Two different things, so I want to make sure that we're very clear. Diversity, as we think about it, is, in a very high level, it's diversity of age, gender, orientation, even thought process, right? So it is pretty important for a company to have a diverse slate of candidates, diverse slate of interviewers, and being able to bring that to the team. What I believe is diversity will get you into the room, but what's more important is for you to be at the table, right? And that's what inclusion does, right? So in order for a company to be successful, you need to have not just diversity, but inclusion where people's thoughts and opinions are taken into consideration. Everybody gets a voice, and use that to your benefit. And that's why fostering D&I creates a much more successful company.
Fostering diversity and inclusion has been so important to our company here at Cox Communications. And Tony does really great work around that, and it's important to us because it's where our innovation comes from. It's where it gives us the ability to stay connected with our customers, their needs and desires, and it's critically important because we need people to be able to bring their best work. And so appreciate what Tony does to live that day in and day out, because it is pivotal to what we value in our company.
One of the things that I've always been told and have lived by is the fact that you need to make yourself a little bit uncomfortable at all times. So in other words, if you're not feeling uncomfortable about where you are, how you're positioning yourself, then you need to continue to push yourself into those uncomfortable situations, so you're challenging yourself at all times, and eventually, moving that forward to gain, progression and progress and drive success. So that's one of the most important things that I've ever been taught, is to continue to challenge myself, and that's the only way you're actually going to grow.
All right. Wow. 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 So everybody, you're in for a treat. You get to hear from Tony himself, the man whom everybody has talked about, all those accolades and his leadership style. So Tony, let's jump into it. Let's talk about your journey, right? So one of the things that we know is you've gone from building Sprint PCS networks at a really tender age of 25 to leading Cox national mobile launch, right? That's a gap right there. Looking back, how did those early leadership experiences shape the kind of leader that we just had people talk about on that video?
Well, thank you, Anne Marie, and to all the people that were in that video. Thank you to them. It's the third time I've watched that video, and every time I get uncomfortable. We talked about being uncomfortable, but uncomfortable, and I blush a little bit. So if I look a little red, that's why. But let's dive into it. I've been working in forms of telecom, and I did the math on this just recently for another podcast. But 39 years. That's going to age me quite a bit, but that's how long I've been working in the telecom space, and it's provided me just tons of experiences and skills and leadership opportunities. And so some of them I'll talk about. One is I'm an engineer by schooling, so I developed a lot of technical expertise, 15 years of designing, developing, and deploying networks. And then I've learned how to really adapt some of the, and we'll talk about some of this later, but some of the things I've had to do to adapt to current situations. There's been many technology shifts. There's been lots of different strategies and 3 different companies that I've worked for, but all of it required just a ton of different adjustments. I've had a breadth of experience through all these leadership roles. I've worked in many disciplines across all things telecom. So being able to start from scratch to build Cox Mobile was an incredible confluence of just years of learning. And that's what it's been, is learning. I've never stopped learning as I've gone along. And from a leadership perspective, I had to go through many trials and tribulations. As we were prepping for this, Anne Marie, there's some things that I know we wanted to talk about. And one of the first examples is when I got asked to go to Milwaukee to build the first one of the first PCS markets there. It was my first big leadership role, and so I was sent to Milwaukee. Like you said earlier, I was about 25 years old. Never really managed a large team. I had a small group of engineers that I had been working with for a period of time, but just a few years out of engineering school, I was sent to Milwaukee to go build this network. And we had no office space there. We had no team. I literally went and bought a fax machine. Yes, that's dating me, I know. And a conference phone to set up a temporary office in my apartment that I was renting as I moved to Milwaukee. And then I started hiring and looking for a permanent office. Just the whole role of like starting something from scratch like that was absolutely amazing. But I ran into many issues, as you can imagine. One of note was how I was spending time with some members of my staff. This was, call it, 8 to 12 months into it. But I was young, 25 years old, and I was doing things outside of the office with some members of my staff, but not others. And that created perceptions of favoritism, as I discovered after consulting actually a business journalist from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. I didn't know where else to go, but I was reading her articles every week in the paper. And so I reached out to get her counsel, and it didn't take her very long to figure out what was going on. And thanks to her, I quickly shifted and things got better very quickly. By basically removing that perception of favoritism out of the office. And another example is the law firm I hired there. I started working with a lawyer. His name was Chaz Mulcahy. He was an attorney that kind of took me under his wing and helped me to be very, very successful with the build out. And he used his own personal political capital to help me win over mayors and zoning boards. And he taught me a lot about what it meant to truly build strong business relationships and what it means to network with the right people to get things done. And without Chaz's help, we would not have launched the Milwaukee PCS network when we did. And I probably wouldn't have been asked to go lead the build out of the Northeast region of the country. After that, my career may have taken a very different path. So just the really important nuggets in there around networking and building relationships and really recognizing when people are becoming your mentor. I never asked like Chaz to be my mentor. He just was a good guy that was willing to help, and he saw opportunity, but he also wanted to see me become very successful. And so at the time, I can tell you, I didn't recognize that. It was years later, looking back and reflecting upon, what he had done for me, that I reached out to him, and we had a great conversation. I thanked him really thanked him. Like, it wasn't just, oh, thank you. It was a very heartfelt thank you, because I recognize now how important he was in my career, in my life, and as a friend more than anything else. And so just those things are so incredibly important. So you talk about, Anne-Marie, just like some of those leadership nuggets that you take from those early days. I've used that stuff for my entire career.
Right. Tony, one thing that I really liked in the video is you talk about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And one of the things that I really admired about your journey was even your self-awareness, right? The fact that you, at such a tender age, you are aware of what your challenges were, right? You are a great engineer, but sometimes in our careers, we are thrust in opportunity. And opportunity sometimes equals uncertainty, right? So you thought you were going to do X, opportunity knocks, you're sent to an entire region to try and build out a network, and you quickly realize you're in over your head, if I may say, but you've got to get it done. So you have the can-do attitude. You are willing to try, but I love that you even reached out to the journalist, right? Like,
Yeah.
that to me is a level of self-awareness that I really admire.
Yeah, thank you.
So, when I was thinking about your journey, maybe perhaps for the audiences, how did your time at the Air Force and your early days perhaps even prepare you for that level of leadership and ability to lead through complexity and scale? Because those are the two things you really had to tackle.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mentioned earlier, I had spent 12 years in the Air Force in the Wisconsin Air National Guard, and I worked on satellite communication systems. That's where I started to get into the whole radio and telecom space. And my military experience, I think, really formed a lot of my core basic methods of how I operate, and the attributes that I would say shaped who I am. Included things like, in the military, you get all this discipline and structure. You learn what commitment is. When you make a commitment in the military, it's like, in a lot of cases, you can't go back on those commitments. Like, you have to deliver. And then the organization and attention to detail that's required, especially when you're dealing with very complex technology, and all the skills of being an electrical and radio technician. I was a technician before I went to engineering school. And that it's an incredible thing. It's so helpful to have worked on actual radio systems as a technician versus only learning about them in a theoretical way. So combining the hands-on experience of doing that in the military, and then going to engineering school, and then being able to design radio networks. It really was a confluence of many things to make all that come together. But the other thing about the military is there's just a ton of teamwork and collaboration required, as you can imagine. And then just building, if you want to talk about building trust, you really have to trust the people that you're working with. I remember, there were times when I had to get on top of, pieces of equipment, and my unit had a radar, and the radar broadcasted 1.2 megawatts of power. And so when we were working on our equipment, we had to trust my peers they would black out a sector of the radar. So if I'm like standing on a piece of equipment and you say I'm in between like 340 degrees and 330 degrees, black out those 10 degrees. If they missed it by 5 degrees, I'd be like sitting in a microwave oven.
Yeah.
Right. So stuff like that, like you gotta trust your peers. Like, you're not gonna cook me from the inside out. And then being a project engineer, in my very early days, I was kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. That was an incredible learning environment. We were launching and optimizing networks, but you really did it as an individual. And if you were lucky, you had a very small team of people that you could work with to get some of this work done. But when you're doing this in the very early days in the wireless world, there weren't a lot of people that had a lot of skill sets to do this. So it was kind of like you just kind of figured everything out. And so you had to do the RF design, and you had to file like FCC and FAA filings for regulatory purposes, and you had to go purchase land or lease land, and you had to go to zoning meetings, and you had to develop relationships with politicians, and you had to order every single little piece of equipment needed to stand up a cell site or a switching center, and hiring contractors and overseeing construction work and optimizing radio networks. When there's nobody else to get the job done, it all sits on your shoulders. It really is sink or swim. So you have no choice but to figure it out, which creates the best of learning environments, because you just got to do it. Like, you're either going to sink or you're going to swim and make it work. And I've used that way of thinking about solving problems most of my career.
Yeah, I love that. That actually is a great segue to innovation. I want to talk about innovation, right? Because you are a can-do person, and clearly there's been baptism by fire on so many levels, and
Yeah.
you have thrived. But for those of us who look on the outside in, we say, wow, you talk about building Cox Mobile, right? What an incredible opportunity. Can you tell us, like, the first part I want to know is, how do you get to yes in terms of the scale of that kind of innovation? How do you get to yes? And then talk about the innovation that it takes to think that far out, because everybody wants to be the first or the leader in this tech space that we're in.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So first, when we were trying to get the approval from our senior team here at Cox to launch Cox Mobile, it wasn't easy. We had tried this before at Cox, so there was kind of a lot of scar tissue that we needed to work through, and had to convince a lot of people that yet another attempt was worthwhile. So I was actually told no several times and told to stop working on it, but a small group of us still felt that it was incredibly important for our future. So we somewhat secretly still toiled to find the right model to get to a yes. And you know, when we did, it was a huge celebratory moment, obviously, because we had been working on trying to get that approved for so long. But then, you know, after 30 to 35 years of working on so many different domains of the wireless business throughout my career, having the opportunity to build a brand new wireless company was just about the best job opportunity I could ever ask for. It was like I mentioned earlier, a confluence of so many different things and so much time of my job history to kind of now get the chance to, you know, go blueprint the business. I saw our case on the line. He was also on the video. He was, you know, side by side with me through all of this, but you know, he actually helped a lot with the blueprinting of the business, and then hiring a team of leaders, which was probably the most critical success factor. And like you said, Anne Marie, like there's a lot of technical aspects to do what we do, but if you don't hire the right leaders and get the right people on the bus, it's going to be a real problem. And so there was a lot of energy placed into like, who are going to be the leaders of this team that go and build this network. But we had to build it and launch it, and then help to grow it from nothing into something pretty cool. It took a lot of patience and tenacity and leadership. And I think you're familiar, 2 weeks before we were supposed to launch, we were hit with an injunction. We were told by the Delaware Chancery Court that, no, you're not going to launch. So we had to pivot and make adjustments, and we went back to court. I feel like I almost earned a law degree through all of this work, because I had to spend so much time in courtrooms and in depositions and such, which are no fun. I hope whoever's out there listening, I hope you never have to go through a deposition. But we had a lot of support from our senior leaders here at Cox. We knew we were going to get through the legal issues. We didn't know how much time it was going to take, but it was really important to keep the team motivated. And of course, we eventually did launch. And you asked about what it represents for the future of wireless. I think what we try to do is build something different, a different option for consumers, you know, options to converge with other products like home internet. Not many other, like the MSO community has the opportunity to do a lot of convergence between our core broadband services and our mobile services. And many other companies don't have both. So getting that opportunity to work on convergence is important. And then options to drive more and more value for every dollar our customers spend is important as well. So I think we've got a lot to do to continue to drive this future of wireless. And I saw in the chat there's some folks on from Charter, and I think we're going to have the opportunity to do that in partnership. You know, fingers crossed that everything goes smoothly with merger close, but the opportunity to do that in a whole lot larger of a scale, and be able to make things happen in a much larger percentage of the country.
Excellent. So you've addressed the elephant in the room that is actually in the question. So there's a question here that says, Tony, did you ever relocate along with family to take on a role offering promotion in the company? And I feel like you've already addressed that, given the various roles and but I don't know, do you want to add to that in addition to what you've shared?
Yeah, like I mentioned, I've worked at 3 companies. It was Sprint, it was TELUS up in Canada, and it was now Cox. And there have been multiple moves, and I did move my family. Probably the biggest move I made was picking up my family and moving them from Kansas City when I was working at Sprint and taking the role in Canada to Calgary, Alberta, which is a pretty long way from home. And that was a massive shift for my family. And then in when I worked at Sprint, I had moved multiple times. I went to school in Milwaukee. I moved to take the first job down in Chicago, and then I moved back to Milwaukee to build the Milwaukee network, and then I moved to Kansas City. All that was with Sprint. So I've experienced multiple moves. Ever since I've joined Cox, I've been in Atlanta. So that's been a little over 10 years now. But if the role is right, and there's lots of opportunity, then I think there's obviously, options. You got to weigh all options. But at this point in my career, I can tell you that my kids are grown. They're either in college or graduated from college. So my flexibility to move is significantly higher.
Oh, I really love that response. Yeah, exactly. You've got to weigh all the options and the impact of those options, because oftentimes, at least if you have a family, it's not just you, right? And yeah, so absolutely right, Tony. And
Yep.
it's also depending on what season in life you're in. Like you rightly said, the kids are no longer in school. That can be a huge destabilizing factor based on their friendships and their livelihood as well. So thank you for that. I do
And
have another question.
I will add one more thing to that, Anne Marie,
Yeah.
and that's, a lot of the weighing on that is about how the impact you'll have on your children. And in some of the moves we had, one was the kids were very young when we moved to Canada, so we thought they would rebound fairly quickly, and they did. And they loved living in Canada. But then when we moved from Canada to Atlanta, they were teenagers. And I can tell you that was very difficult on them. But the way we thought about it was it should make them stronger. And when they go off to college and they're on their own, they will be able to pull from the learnings that they had while their parents were with them to help them through the transition. And then when they go off on their own and they're not with their parents anymore, the opportunity to learn, to have had that experience, know what it feels like, know what it means to start over. We felt that was immensely valuable for our kids as they moved through the phases of their life. And so even though it was traumatic for them, they would have to do it eventually, either on their own or with in some other situation. So that's the way we thought about it, and I do believe that they are stronger for it.
Yeah, thank you for that, Kandar. Yeah, lots to ponder, and thank you for that. That's a real parent response in terms of just the weight it takes with every decision. I think nothing is ever that simple.
Right.
The second question I have that we've talked about, as you were talking about building a platform that's innovative and that can scale, is an anonymous question here goes with the pending merger with Charter. What would you say to other leaders about being anxious for their future?
Well, that's a good question. I can tell you that there's a lot of people, obviously, with the news. This is coming firsthand now, with the news from Friday on the pending merger with Cox and Charter. I can tell you that there's a lot of questions that haven't been answered, and I think those questions are probably existing on both the Cox side of the house and the charter side of the house. All I can say is until a lot of those questions get answered, there's not a lot to toil over until some of the big questions get answered. I always operate in a calm demeanor. I think most people would describe my leadership style as calm. And so I believe it's important, and it isn't worth getting all worked up over the fear and uncertainty that comes with these types of situations. Things will unfold, and as they unfold, we will all figure it out. And as that happens, my goal is to be there for my team and to be supportive of everybody that it is impacting. And at the end of the day, the ultimate goal is to find a better future together. We all know that the scale is incredibly important, especially when you're dealing with companies that are hitting mature phases of their life cycle. And broadband is a very mature product line at this point. And I think having scale is incredibly important because you got to bring cost structure down. And so the more scale you have, the more cost efficiency you're going to get. And with that, a merger between Cox and Charter just creates incredibly more scale, so that you can drive those cost structures down and ultimately produce a better future collectively for both groups of people. So it's important to stay calm and take it as it comes. And as we learn more, then you can start to work through decisions about what path you might want to take.
Oh, I really appreciate the candor in that, Tony. I can tell that you're a leader who's very well equipped to lead in times of uncertainty. Your response literally epitomizes that in times of uncertainty, you move with what you know, and the rest will unfold as it should, right? And so I love that you focus on let's focus on what we know, and that you've built the trust for your team and hopefully for others to be able to know that you would be the transparent and caring leader. With that response, I actually want to talk about mentorship. You touched briefly on the role that certain mentors that either by default or somehow morphed into that mentorship role played in your early years. And I'm sure even to this very day, you just mentioned applying that. When I look at your involvement in Cox, Lauder's ERGs, to mentoring women in mobile technology, what practices have helped you create an environment where diverse talent can thrive? And I mean diverse in every sense of the word.
First, I just want to say that Cox as a company really focuses a lot of energy around creating inclusive environments. And there's been lots of different programs to help with that. And I'm now a sponsor of one of our ERGs here, which is Employee Resource Group, called Diversibility. And it's all about, helping employees that have diverse capabilities deal with all kinds of things that they may have to deal with. And it's not just about the people dealing with it, it's also about the people that are supporting people dealing with it. So it's, if you have a loved one at home that you're taking care of, and that's, very taxing on your time and your energy, how do we help you to be successful in doing that while also being successful in your role here at Cox? And you mentioned the Lotus ERG, which is all about Asian and Pacific Islanders, and I am an Asian American, and so I'm actively involved in that. And then there's specifically around women and helping women thrive. I want to plug a book that I worked through called How Women Rise. Some of you may have heard of it. It's if you want to check it out, it's by Sally Helgeson and Marshall Goldsmith. it is amazing when I work through that book, it's a book that really talks about in understanding the habits that many women have that might prevent them from reaching their goals. And I had the opportunity to lead a small group of women as we worked through that book together. It was amazing. I learned so much about the differences and it really comes down to how women are raised and the cultural practices and what they're taught by their mothers and their grandmothers, and what that means with respect to how they operate in the workplace. And so working through that book with a small group of ladies was incredible. It was in one of the most incredible learning experiences I ever had. It actually helped me understand even how to be a better husband and work collectively with my wife through things that we might be dealing with. And so I would recommend, I think, if people out there want to like grab that book and grab some ladies and go work through the book together, because there's incredible learnings in there. Second, establishing Mark Lawson in the video talked about making people feel safe. And something I've really focused on is creating this environment of psychological safety. And so how do you do that? It's first, I think you start with just having great inclusive people on your team, having just great talent, and then really trusting in their abilities. If you don't get the right people on the team, and you can't trust their abilities, it's gonna create breakdowns across the entire organization. So you got to get the right people on the bus, and then once you have them and you trust, and everybody across the team trusts each other and their abilities, then you just let them run, right? And they will figure it out. That creates a really cohesive team environment where people are just leaning on each other. And then another piece, I think, is to never react, or let's say never overreact to bad news. We all get bad news. Things happen, but if you create hysteria when something bad happens, then people will be reticent to bring forward concerns and issues. So I've mentioned before about remaining calm. I think if you asked anybody on my team, they have never seen me like raise my voice or get like visibly upset about something. It's like, let's talk through how to solve it. The main thing is, how do we move forward from here? So that not overreacting to bad news, I think, is a big piece of giving that freedom for people to work collectively better together. And then giving people the benefit of the doubt that everybody's trying to do the right thing. Sometimes people need to be redirected in certain ways, but I truly believe when we built this team that it was like everybody wants to do the right thing. And so if you do all those things and you don't let mistakes turn into big negative events, you learn from those mistakes, you move on, you fail fast, it's really going to create that environment of psychological safety, which is, I think, incredibly important to building a team of people that are really, really going to thrive together and win as a team. Does that make sense, Anne-Marie?
Excellent. Thank you. Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. I love that. I love that Amy actually typed that out. Like, there's really no need to create hysteria as a leader. It just creates more uncertainty within the team. So Tony, here we are in 2025. As you said, we are in an industry that is changing at quite a rapid pace. We need to scale. We need to make sure that we remain competitive. Yet we have these professionals who are looking to grow in an industry and maybe may feel as outsiders. The news is what the news is. What advice would you give them to finding their path and their voice?
Okay, we could spend the whole hour talking about this topic. I'll touch on a few things. First is, especially for the young people out there, continuous learning. If you are walking around thinking that you know everything or even most of everything, you're sadly mistaken. Even at my age, being in this telecom industry for 39 years, I learn new things almost every single day. And so sometimes that comes through formal education. Sometimes that comes through just learning from my team, working through problems as a team together. Continuous learning is one of the most important aspects of continuing to grow. And then building strong networks of help. And, NAMIC does a great job of that. Like you provide the tools and the environments for people to come together and build these networks of people that can help each other be successful, to work through issues together. And we cannot do it alone. Nobody on the face of the planet can do it alone. So you have to have these strong networks of people that are going to work together to solve problems. Next, I mentioned in the video, and this one is incredibly important, is being willing to get out of your comfort zone and be there for long periods of time. And if you're not pushing yourself to the point of being not only uncomfortable, but very uncomfortable, you're probably not pushing hard enough. If you are somebody that is okay with the status quo, and that's fine to be that way. I don't want to tell you like, oh, you're doing it wrong if you like to just keep on like a steady roll. You're not interested in growing your career. But I think most people, especially people on this call, are probably more interested in how do I grow my career in different ways. If you're not uncomfortable, you're not pushing yourself. And if you're not pushing yourself, you're probably not going to grow as fast as you possibly can. So I would say be uncomfortable, right? And I would say in the last 10 years, I've gotten more and more uncomfortable as we work through all kinds. And if anybody wants to feel uncomfortable, like I mentioned before, go through a deposition or sit on the witness stand while the opposing attorneys are drilling you with questions. That is uncomfortable. But I had to do it in order to be able to get to the place where we are, where we could launch our mobile company. And then this is a business of change. We are constantly changing. So you got to be able to adapt to that change. So building skill sets to understand how to change and deal with it is just get used to the fact that things are going to forever be in this state of change. And the more you stop fighting that and just accept it and build tools for yourself to be able to deal with it, the better. And the next thing I'll talk about is data insights. In most roles, it doesn't matter if you're an analytics person or you're a strategy person or you're a marketing person or you're a salesperson. If you're not looking at data insights and getting really good at understanding those insights and making data-informed decisions, then you are likely going to have trouble. And that's it. It is imperative, right, as you try to make good business decisions, that you're spending a lot of time understanding the insights of what it is you're trying to decide. That you want me to stop there? I can keep going.
No, you keep going, Tony. Keep, they asked this question and I can tell that it's being very well received.
Yeah. So another one is if you're in an established business, it's important to spend time with customers. I learned so much every time I go out into the field. I do my best to meet with salespeople. I meet with installation crews. I meet with care people, like customer care teams, because the information you learn from these customers is incredibly insightful. And especially if you're like in a product role, like I'm sitting in a product role. If you don't understand how your products are performing, your salespeople, your customer care people and your installation people will tell you what's working well and what's not working well. You have to spend time with them, and you have to spend time in front of the customer to really understand what's going on. So you have to do that. And then use that information relentlessly to continuously improve what it is you're working on, and learn how to be resilient, and have a lot of grit and tenacity. Things aren't going to always just kind of come to you on a silver platter. You have to fight for it. And I think there's a lot of examples. I'm sure there's many people on the call today that can cite examples of how they really had to fight. And I mentioned earlier, like just getting Cox Mobile off the ground was a fight. And there were many times when even members of the team would say, are we done? Like, are we throwing in the towel? I say, absolutely, we're not done. We're just getting started. But you got to be able to fight. And then collaboration is incredibly important. Anytime you get into any company like a Cox or a Charter or a Comcast or any large organization like that, you're going to have all these different functional parts of the organization. And if you can't get really good at collaborating and working in matrixed environments, you're gonna have a hard road. It's important to get really good at working well in teams and partnering to get things done. And the last thing I'll tell you, Anne Marie, is maintaining balance and harmony within your life itself. Like, there's so many different domains that you have to take care of, whether it be your health, whether it be your personal finances, whether it be taking care of your children and your family. And there's all kinds of different domains that all have to be taken care of simultaneously. If you spend all your time on the one domain of career, and that's all you spend your time on, and you forego having fun, taking care of the concerns of your family, dealing with your health, taking care of your health, then you're going to burn out. And ultimately you're going to end up having breakdowns. So it's incredibly important to maintain, actually, I like to say harmony instead of balance, because there's so many things happening simultaneously in our lives. You cannot take care of everything at the same time. One day you may be focused on this, another day you may be focused on that, but you're living in harmony across all these concerns that you carry, and you got to take care of all of it. And if you don't, you're gonna force yourself to ultimately have those breakdowns. So live in harmony. Try to live and take care of all your concerns,
I love it.
not just your career concern.
Absolutely. We're multifaceted beings, and each the one that you feed the most is the one that thrives. So find harmony in that.
Yeah.
I want to just share that for individuals looking to grow, one additional area that I would like to encourage you to explore is volunteerism. I find that volunteering in areas of space where you're trying to grow. So if you're looking to do marketing, if you're trying to look for collaboration skills, consider volunteering. NAMIC has 18 chapters. And I'm not just plugging NAMIC. Of course, find something that you're passionate about and volunteer in it. And through volunteerism, you can actually get those skills that you're looking for when sometimes those opportunities are not available in your 9-to-5 job, So consider volunteering, consider if you're looking to be more creative, find outlets that allow you to do that, because I love to say volunteering is experience with low risk. You're not going to get fired as volunteers most of the time. So that's gaining experience with low risk. Consider volunteering. It is such a good way for you to learn, to engage, to give back, and to acquire skills that you may not otherwise have had. So I wanted to just do an end to the amazing list that you just shared and encourage people to volunteer. So if it's not in your company, then find it in a space where you can grow and give back, and in the process acquire skills like you just noted. So just wanted to add that additional opportunity. And if you look in the chat, my amazing team is giving you resources on where you can go for that. So Tony, we are at 5:23, and I kind of want to jump into, I have two questions. One is kind of, given your crystal ball experience and where we are in 2025, looking at market insights, because we've talked about insights and technological insights, what's next for you? Are there technologies, challenges, or impact areas you're excited to take on in this next chapter of your career?
You know, since the beginning of the year, I've been placed into a whole new role here at Cox. So I was wholly focused on Cox Mobile up until the end of last year. And now I'm leading all of the products and services for the residential business unit here at Cox. So that's an expanded role that manages all of our residential products and services. And so that I'm working through that as it's only been a few months in that role. And so that's a big change for me, and we're doing it with a new team of people. So that's really great. As we head down the road, we talked a little bit about the fact that there's a pending merger with two companies. There's uncertainty around what that will bring and what kinds of roles and opportunities exist. But whatever happens. But I really enjoyed, Anne-Marie, like designing, building, launching Cox Mobile, and it was the experience of a lifetime. If I could find ways of doing more of that, that's where I would love to focus my energy. Growing startup businesses. I would love to do that. Like when we did it for Cox Mobile, it was a startup environment, but it was like having a warm blanket wrapped around you, because we worked for a larger company. You never had to worry about where your paycheck was coming from, or all the startup company types of problems with making payroll and stuff like that. But that would be awesome. There's a lot of stuff like that happens here at Cox. So that's of clear interest for me, is finding opportunities like that. But right now with the merger in the background, what's next for me is a bit of a question mark, and we'll just see. Like I said, we're gonna remain calm, see how it all comes, and figure out what the next chapter looks like.
Awesome. So now we're in the very fun segment of our fireside chat, and that is rapid fire questions. Are you ready, Tony?
I am ready.
All right. So we've talked about finding harmony. So let's see how we do here.
Okay.
Who's your favorite comedian, and or where you go to for a good laugh?
I would say my favorite comedian is probably Nate Bargatze. For good, clean fun.
Oh, wow. Good, clean. Yeah.
Fun.
Awesome. All right, let's talk about books. What's a book or a podcast that's had a big impact on your leadership style?
I mentioned before How Women Rise. And I know I'm not a woman, but I mentioned how much I've heard from that. But the other one I would say is Good to Great. I've worked in a lot of
Good to Great. Yes.
Yeah, and then figuring out how to move to that next level. I think Good to Great is a fantastic book.
It is my number one leadership book. I love to have offsite meetings and delve into that book with a team. I just think it elevates the game for everybody. So yes, I second that one. So if you could have dinner with any innovator, past or present, who would it be and why?
As an innovator, I would have to pick Nikola Tesla. He started it all with radio frequency engineering. I'm an RF engineer by schooling, and he founded a lot of the theories and all the transmission technologies that we still work with today Without his work, who knows if anything would be wireless today? It may not exist. So Nikola Tesla would be
Awesome.
an incredible
Nikola
guy to
Tesla.
spend some time with.
Excellent. All right. So this is going to be interesting. Sometimes I ask tech people these questions and I'm very surprised by the response I get back. But let me try you. What's your favorite piece of technology that you can't live without?
Can I give you two?
Sure.
One, air conditioning.
Amen to that one.
I don't mind being cold. I lived in Canada, but if I had no air conditioning living in Atlanta, I could not do this job. I would be living somewhere north. But the second one I have to say is indoor plumbing.
And
I don't, yeah.
I don't think I've received any of those responses. You win. You win. You win. You win. I really, you know what? You win. You are a true tech innovative guy. You win. Look at, do you see? Everybody agrees with you. All right, let's see. I think I took a gamble on this, so my team is listening. Let's see where we go with this. Mountains or beaches? Where do you recharge best?
Okay. I love the mountains. I climb them. Matter of fact, I've climbed 2 of the 7 summits. I've climbed most of the 14ers in Colorado. When I lived in Canada, we climbed, at least 50 mountains up there. I do mountains every year, so I find peace with them. I find challenge with them. I find indescribable beauty with the mountains. So if I had to pick, it would be mountains. However, my retirement home is on the beach. So go figure. So I love both. But if I had to pick one, I think mountains would be the one for me.
All right. Thank you for redeeming me. I told the team you would say mountains, and I could remember how you'd ride your bike in Calgary in the cold with the snow. And I was like, mountains. It has to be mountains. So thank you. Oh my goodness. To everybody who's joined us today, we have enjoyed spending the last 60 minutes with you. Tony, what a treasure. What a treat. Thank you for your candor. Thank you for sharing your leadership experiences and nuggets with us. It has been a most insightful fire chat. I have enjoyed it. Thank you for being here. Is there anything, any closing remarks you'd like to give our audiences today?
I just want to thank you for the opportunity. It's been a joy working with you and your team through the whole process, and I really enjoyed speaking with all of you today. And I look forward to whatever the future brings. And I'm always available if people want to reach out and chat about things. I love networking, so I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tony. And we will be back. We'll be calling you again. This was absolutely fantastic. And to everybody who spent your time with us, thank you for giving us the gift of your time. I've been your moderator, Anne Marie Burton. And until next time, have a wonderful evening. Bye.